I found out I was pregnant and homeless on the same Tuesday. Not separately, not hours apart. The same 60-minute window, the kind of cosmic cruelty that makes you question whether God has a sense of humor or just a mean streak. My name is Naomi, and I had been married to George for 4 years. 4 years of building something I believed in, a townhouse with a navy blue door, a joint savings account, a shared calendar color-coded by category, a life that looked, from the outside, like a photograph people screenshot and save to their phones as aspiration. We met in our late 20s at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. He ordered the same thing I ordered. He laughed at the same things. I thought that meant something. It meant we both liked salmon. The signs were there. I know that now, the way you know things only after the knowing costs you everything. The late nights that started explaining themselves too thoroughly. The phone that traveled everywhere, bathroom, garage, Sunday morning church. The way he started complimenting my appearance, specifically when he'd done something he needed me not to suspect. But I was pregnant. 7 weeks. I found out that morning, a digital test on a Tuesday while George was supposedly in a 7 a.m. client meeting. I sat on the bathroom floor with the test in my hand and felt something enormous and terrifying bloom open in my chest. Bigger than fear, bigger than joy. I called him immediately. Voicemail. I texted, "I need to talk to you. It's important, come home." He replied 45 minutes later. Busy. Tonight. Tonight arrived. He didn't. What arrived instead, at 6:47 p.m., was a certified letter from a property management company I had never heard of. George had terminated our lease 3 weeks ago. The townhouse, the one with the navy blue door, the one where I'd picked out the curtains, the one where I'd taken that test this very morning, was no longer ours. No longer mine. I read the letter 3 times on the front step. Then I looked up and realized I was sitting outside a home already taken from me, holding news of a life just beginning, while my husband celebrated somewhere else entirely. I didn't cry. I got very, very still. And I started thinking. My best friend Relle answered the door in her housecoat at 8 p.m. and took one look at my face. "Come in," she said. No questions, no fanfare, just the door swinging wide. Relle was 41, 3 years older than me, with a sharp mind and a sharper mouth, and the specific loyalty of a woman who had watched you survive your worst days and loved you anyway. We'd been friends since our mid-20s, the kind of friendship that doesn't require explanation, just presence. I sat at her kitchen table and told her everything. The test, the letter, the 6:47 p.m. timestamp on a certified notice of lease termination, as if the universe wanted me to remember the exact minute my life restructured itself without asking my permission. She didn't speak for a long time. Then, "How long ago did he sign it?" 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. She repeated it the way people repeat things they already suspected. "Naomi," she set down her mug, "I've been trying to figure out how to tell you something for 2 months." The kitchen went quiet in that specific way. Rooms do when something unavoidable is about to be said. "There's a woman named Desire." Relle said the name carefully, placing it deliberately on the table between us, like evidence. "She works in his company's satellite office. They've been seen, not at lunch restaurants, a hotel near the convention center, twice that I know of." I heard her, I did, but some part of me had already known. The way your body knows things, your mind refuses to file officially. "He moved us out," I said slowly. "He terminated the lease without telling me, which means he has somewhere else to be." Relle nodded. "While I was sitting on those steps," I continued, "he was with her." "Naomi?" I'm pregnant, Rochelle. The word landed between us like something dropped from a height. Her face changed completely. She reached across the table and grabbed both my hands. Okay, she said. Steady now. Tactical. You don't call him. Don't text him. Don't let him know what you know. Not yet. Why? She met my eyes. Because pregnant and homeless is where he thinks this ends. We need to make sure it's only where it begins. Are you enjoying the story so far? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because trust me, there's a lot more story to be told without wasting much time. Let's continue. George came home to Rochelle's, where he finally tracked me, at 11 that night, with an explanation already built, polished and rehearsed. He was a good-looking man. I need you to understand that because it matters, not because beauty excuses anything, but because beautiful people learn early that a well-arranged face can substitute for accountability in a room full of people who aren't paying close enough attention. George was 6 feet, broad across the shoulders, with dark brown skin and close-cropped hair that he kept lined every Friday without fail. He had a way of walking into rooms like he'd already won whatever argument was about to happen. He knocked on Rochelle's door. She let him in with an expression I can only describe as professionally neutral. Naomi. He saw me at the kitchen table. Relief crossed his face. Performed relief, I now recognized, the kind where the eyes don't follow the mouth. I've been looking everywhere for you. Why didn't you answer my calls? You called 4 times in the last hour, I said. You were busy all day. He sat down across from me without being invited. The lease situation, I was going to tell you. I found us something better, a bigger place. I wanted to surprise you. There it was, clean, warm, ready-made, a surprise. I looked at him. You signed papers 3 weeks ago and said nothing. I was handling it. Where are my things, George? In storage. I have the key. Where have you been tonight? The pause was microscopic. A person who loved him might have missed it. I caught it like a fishhook. Client dinner, he said. I told you this morning. He hadn't, but that was the architecture of his lying, mixing real information with invented details until you doubted your own memory. I'm pregnant, I said. I watched his face. I am not ashamed to say I watched for guilt before joy. What I saw was something more complicated, a flash of something that wasn't happiness, more like calculation, reorganizing itself into the shape of happiness. Naomi, he reached across the table. That's incredible. His hand covered mine, warm, steady. I left my hand there and kept my face open and let him believe I believed him. Because Rochelle was right. This was only where it begins. Her full name was Desire Fontaine, and she was 34 years old. I found this out not through confrontation, but through a woman named Paulette, George's administrative assistant, who had been quietly appalled by the situation for 8 months and needed very little prompting to share what she knew over coffee one Thursday afternoon. Paulette was 52, a small woman with silver-streaked locks and the moral clarity of someone who'd raised 3 daughters alone and had 0 patience for men who wasted good women. She slid a manila folder across the coffee shop table as if we were in a movie she'd been rehearsing. Inside, printed email threads. Hotel receipts on the company card. A photograph taken at a company event, George with his hand on the small of a woman's back, both of them looking at something off-camera with the easy intimacy of people who touch each other regularly. Desire. Fontaine was tall, light-skinned, with natural hair and sharp eyes. She was not a villain in this story. I decided that immediately, and I meant it. She was a woman who had possibly been lied to just as thoroughly as I had. What she was evidence. "He's been using company resources," Paulette said pointedly. "Hotel rooms billed to client accounts, dinners, a weekend in another city last October." October. I had been home that October weekend with a sinus infection and a bowl of soup George had said Rochelle dropped off. I had texted Rochelle to thank her. She'd been confused, but played along, and later told me she hadn't sent any soup. He had sent himself soup from my best friend's name. The audacity sat in my stomach, like something swallowed wrong. "Does she know he's married?" I asked. Paulette's expression said everything. I believe she was told the marriage was over. There it was. I sat with the folder on the table between us and thought about the baby growing in my body. 10 weeks now, a heartbeat confirmed on an ultrasound George had attended and cried at, actual tears, and I had watched him cry and thought, this man contains multitudes and most of them are dangerous. I thanked Paulette. I took photographs of everything in the folder with my phone. Then I called my mother's attorney. Not yet, I told myself, not quite yet. But soon. There is a specific exhaustion that comes from performing normalcy while sitting on top of an earthquake. I was 13 weeks pregnant by the time I'd assembled what I needed. Rochelle called it building the case. I called it surviving without detonating. Every morning I woke up in Rochelle's guest room. She'd refused to let me go back to George until I was ready, put on the face of a wife navigating a difficult patch, and moved through the days like water, finding its level. George had rented an apartment for us. Newer, larger, 4th floor. He presented it like a gift. I smiled and touched the countertops and said all the right things. Meanwhile, I had met with attorney Celeste Hargrove twice. Celeste was 47, Nigerian American, with natural hair, reading glasses on a chain, and a reputation in family law that made opposing counsel uncomfortable. She reviewed everything Paulette had given me, requested financial records, and found things George believed were buried. The joint account I knew about had $14,000. The account I didn't know about had $67,000. He's been diverting marital income consistently for approximately 2 years, Celeste told me. 2 years. 1 before the pregnancy, 1 during our marriage, where I thought we were building equity together. He had been building, all right, just not with me. The lease termination is documented, Celeste continued. He removed you from a marital residence without disclosure. That matters. The undisclosed account matters. The documented use of marital funds for the other relationship matters significantly. I sat in her office and felt something happen inside me. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity arriving after a long fog. The kind of clarity that has weight. I'm due in late spring, I told her. Celeste nodded. Then we move before the baby comes. You want stability and documentation in place before that child arrives. What does he stand to lose? I asked quietly. She looked at me steadily. More than he knows he's carrying. I drove back to Rochelle's that evening. She had made dinner, real dinner, the kind that means I love you in the language of food. We ate across from each other and she asked me only one question. Are you ready? I touched my stomach. 14 weeks. A life assembling itself quietly inside me while I assembled something else entirely outside. Almost, I said. I planned the dinner carefully. George had been pressing for us to move into the new apartment together. He was attentive now in the specific way men are attentive when they sense something shifting beneath them and can't name it yet. Small gifts, Surprise lunch deliveries, a hand always reaching for mine in public. He had started talking about baby names. I let him talk. I chose a Thursday. I cooked his favorite meal, braised short ribs, roasted sweet potatoes, the good cornbread from scratch. I set the table properly. I wore the green dress he'd always said made me look beautiful. I lit candles. He arrived at 7 p.m., saw the table, and something in his face went soft and grateful. We ate, we talked. He was warm, engaged, the version of George that had made me fall in love. I recognized that version now for what it was, not a fake self, but a self he deployed strategically. Over dessert, I said, I know about desire. The fork stopped moving. I kept my voice level. I know about the hotel near the convention center. I know about the account you've been building separately for 2 years. I know you told her the marriage was over when it wasn't. And I know you were with her the night that letter arrived, and I was sitting on the front steps. He said nothing. I have documentation, I continued. My attorney has documentation. We are 15 weeks pregnant, and I am done. Naomi? I'm not asking you to explain. I don't need an explanation. I need you to understand what's about to happen legally and decide how you'd like to proceed. The candles flickered between us. He looked at me the way people look at someone they suddenly don't recognize, half fear, half something that might have been respect arriving much too late. You've been planning this, he said quietly. You left me homeless and pregnant, I answered. Yes, I planned. He reached for his water glass. His hand was not steady. Good, I thought. I want to fix this, he said. I know you do, I replied, but you'll be fixing it through Celeste Hargrove's office. Her number is on the counter. I blew out the candles and left him at the table. He called Celeste's office at 8 a.m. the following Monday. This surprised me, not that he called, but how quickly. 4 years of marriage and I had never once seen George move fast toward accountability. He was a man who had perfected the art of the strategic delay, the conversation rescheduled, the issue allowed to cool until you began to question whether you'd overreacted. But I had said the words attorney and documentation, and something had clicked into place. He hired his own lawyer, a man named Gregory Holt, who specialized in asset protection and had a reputation for making marital proceedings as complicated as possible. Celeste was not impressed. She told me this with the energy of a chess player who had already seen 12 moves ahead. What happened next, I did not plan for. Desire Fontaine called me. Not a text, a phone call. My personal number, which meant George had given it to her at some point, a detail I filed away. I answered. I need you to know, she said, her voice careful and controlled, that I was told you and George had been separated for a year, that you were finalizing things. I was not. She stopped, steadied herself. I would not have, if I had known. I believed her. This is not naivety. I had watched what Paulette's documentation revealed, and nothing in Desire's pattern suggested a woman who knowingly dismantled another woman's home. She was also a woman who had been lied to. We were, in the worst and most specific way, on the same side. He told you the marriage was functionally over, I said. Yes. Did he tell you I was pregnant? A silence I will never forget. No, she said finally. He did not. The phone call lasted 11 minutes. I recorded it with her knowledge. At the end, she asked what she could do. I told her to put in writing everything he had told her about the state of our marriage, the timeline, the specific assurances, the lies. She did. Within 48 hours, she sent a signed, notarized statement to Celeste's office. George, as it turned out, had built a very elaborate structure. What he had not calculated was that the two women he had been managing separately would ever be in the same room, metaphorically speaking. We were in the same room now. The hardest part was not the legal battle. The hardest part was 2 a.m. in Rochelle's kitchen, 18 weeks pregnant, when the strategy fell away and left just me. Naomi, who had loved a man, who had believed in a life, who was growing a child in a body that was tired and scared in ways no attorney strategy could address. Relle found me there both times. She had a gift for it, appearing in doorways at 2 a.m. without making you feel discovered. She'd pour 2 glasses of water and sit down like it was noon, and we were just 2 women at a table. "Talk," she'd say. The first time, "I miss who I thought he was." "I know," she said. "That person was real enough to fool you. That's not stupidity. That's being human." The second time, 3 weeks later, "What if I'm not enough on my own?" Relle set down her water glass and looked at me with the specific intensity of someone who has been waiting to say something for a long time. "Naomi, you have been building a legal case, growing a human being, managing your emotions, making strategic decisions, and outmaneuvering a man who had a 2-year head start, simultaneously, while homeless, while pregnant, while grieving a marriage. If you have been doing all of that as not enough, I genuinely fear what enough looks like." I laughed. It surprised me, the laugh arriving without warning, genuine and necessary. She reached across the table. "You are not starting over," she said. "You are starting. There is a difference." I held on to that. My mother called that week for the first time in months. She had heard, "Families here, eventually," and her voice on the phone was different than it had ever been. Softer. Less advice, more presence. "How are you carrying it?" she asked. "Heavy," I said honestly, "but I'm carrying it." She was quiet for a moment, then, "You always were the one who got up." I pressed the phone to my shoulder after we hung up and stood in Rochelle's kitchen, feeling that land, the specific comfort of being known by someone who knew you before you were strong. I was going to be okay. Not yet, but the okay was visible from where I was standing. The settlement took 4 months of careful, grinding, necessary work. Celeste Hargrove was, as advertised, relentless. Gregory Holt made things complicated. Celeste made things expensive for him to complicate. This is how good attorneys work. They understand that obstruction has a cost, and they make sure the obstructing party bears it. The undisclosed account was divided as marital property. The documentation of George using marital funds for his other relationship reduced his claims significantly. The lease termination, removing me from a shared residence while I was an unknowing pregnant woman, was presented with the kind of quiet devastation that doesn't need volume to land. George's attorney advised him to settle. He did. I won't list every number because that's not the point of this story. What I'll say is, I walked out of that process with enough to begin. An apartment, my name only, chosen by me, with a door painted the color I chose, not the color anyone else would have suggested. Financial stability documented and enforceable. Child support established before our daughter took her first breath outside my body. Our daughter. She arrived on a Tuesday, the same day of the week this all began, which I noted with the exhausted awe of someone who believes the universe occasionally writes in rhyme. 6 pounds, 11 ounces, with a head full of dark hair and the most serious expression I had ever seen on a new person, as if she had already assessed the situation and found it manageable. I named her Celeste. My attorney laughed when I told her, head thrown back, genuinely delighted. Relle cried. Her shoulders shook, and she didn't apologize for it. I held her hand in the hospital room while she cried for both of us, for everything that could have broken me and hadn't. My mother flew in and stayed 2 weeks. She washed dishes and made food and held the baby for hours while I slept, and sometimes I'd wake up and hear her in the next room talking quietly to little Celeste, telling her things I couldn't quite catch but felt in the air like warmth. George met his daughter at the designated time, supervised initially per the agreement. He held her carefully, like something he understood he could damage. I watched him. I felt nothing sharp, just distance, like looking at a photograph of a place he used to live. Celeste is 8 months old as I write this, and she has made it clear that the world will need to make room for her. She has my cheekbones and her father's eyelashes, and an opinion about everything, expressed loudly and without apology, which I've decided to take as personality rather than challenge. I work from the apartment with the door I painted terracotta, warm and stubborn, and a color nobody expected but me. I rebuilt my freelance client list in the 3rd trimester, which my OB mildly objected to, and Relle actively encouraged. Celeste does not know yet that her arrival coincided with the most painful and clarifying season of my life. She will know someday. I'll tell her when she's ready, and I'll tell her completely, because she deserves to understand the woman who raised her. Here is what I want to say to whoever is reading this, at whatever hour, in whatever version of the dark. Being betrayed does not make you foolish. You loved someone with the information you had. He operated with information he hid. The failure of his character is not evidence of yours. But here is the part nobody tells you. What grew alongside that baby was not just a legal case. It was me. A version of me I hadn't met yet, the one who could sit across a table and say, "I know everything," without her voice shaking. The one who could accept help without shame. The one who could grieve a marriage and build a life simultaneously, because grief and building are not opposites. You can do both. You must. Relle came over last Sunday. She held Celeste while I made coffee, and at one point she looked up at me across the kitchen. This kitchen, mine, with the terracotta door visible from where she sat, and said, simply, "Look at you." Not dramatically, not with big ceremony, just, "Look at you." I looked. At the apartment I chose, at the baby I grew, at the terracotta door. At the life assembled from the rubble of a Tuesday night when I sat on a front step with a pregnancy test and a certified letter and the specific silence of a woman deciding what comes next. Turns out, what comes next was always mine to determine. It always was. The baby they tried to make a footnote became the whole story. The end. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for watching. I hope it stayed with you and gave you something to think about. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe and be part of the journey. There's so much more story still to come.